Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've glanced at the news literally any time recently, you know the feeling. The sheer volume of anxiety surrounding artificial intelligence right now is, well, it's inescapable. Deep fakes, algorithms coming for our jobs, hyper-smart systems going completely rogue. It feels like this massive, unprecedented modern crisis, right? But what if it isn't? What if this deep existential dread about our own autonomous creations is actually an ancient anxiety, like thousands of years old? Today, we're diving into a mind-bending study from Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence that completely flips the script on our current AI ethics conversation, and it does it by tracing these exact same dilemmas all the way back to our ancient ancestors.
So, are we losing control of AI? Honestly, that's kind of the defining question of our era. We picture these incredibly capable machines crunching millions of variables a millisecond, quietly cooking up their own internal logic and their own hidden agendas. And in a weird way, that's almost a comforting thought. It's psychologically way easier to blame some sci-fi villain or rogue machine intelligence than to face the actual reality. Because, as this research emphatically points out, we need to disrupt this idea right out of the gate. The vast majority of the harms we're seeing from AI right now aren't because machines are spontaneously growing a mind of their own. Nope. They are the direct result of human design choices, rushed corporate rollouts, and massive institutional governance failures.
And that brings us to the core thesis of our analysis today. Look, artificial intelligence is not an independent moral agent. It's a proxy executing human intent. The researchers call this Delegated Agency. Basically, even if a system looks completely autonomous and goal-directed from the outside, that behavior is 100% derived from human-programmed objectives and training data. It's so much easier to just throw our hands up and say, whoops, the AI made a mistake, rather than admit, hey, we completely failed to manage the tool we built. When a system fails ethically, that is a human governance failure. We aren't losing control to some mysterious new digital species. We're just doing a really bad job of managing a proxy we explicitly gave power to. To really grasp this, we're going to take a quick trip through history, because humans have been designing artifacts to act on our behalf for centuries, way before silicon chips were even a thought. We'll start in ancient Greece with the myth of Talos, jump to 16th century Prague for the golem, touch on 18th century mechanical automata, and finish up in the 19th century with the conceptual analytical engine. These aren't just, dusty old myths or neat trivia. They're brilliant socio-technical mirrors reflecting humanity's long-standing, recurring struggles with delegated power and our deepest vulnerabilities.
Section 1. Guardians with a flaw. Let's look at bounded coercive mandates.
All right, let's meet Talos. In Greek mythology, Talos was this colossal bronze automaton engineered by Hephaestus, the god of the forge. His one job? Act as a tireless sentinel protecting the island of Crete. He was an absolute behemoth, basically a towering ancient security drone. His patrol method was brutally simple. Circle the island's perimeter 3 times a day and violently hurl massive boulders at any approaching foreign ships. As a user interface for a security system, blindly throw giant rocks at anything that moves is, well, pretty flawed. He was the ultimate proto-technological guardian, built for ultimate protection, but carrying a fatal, built-in vulnerability.
See, Talos operated on a strictly rigid binary mandate: repel or destroy. That was it. He possessed absolutely zero contextual moral judgment. This giant bronze machine literally couldn't tell the difference between a heavily armed pirate ship, a lost merchant trader, or desperate refugees seeking asylum from a storm. His logic never changed. Plus, he had a single point of failure: a sealed vein of Ichor, which was basically the magic blood of the gods, plugged by a single bronze nail near his ankle. When the sorceress Medea spotted this bug in his system, she manipulated it. The nail got pulled, and Talos bled out and collapsed. This ancient story is just a perfect mirror for the massive ethical dilemmas we face right now with automated border enforcement drones and predictive policing algorithms. When we hand over coercive authority to systems that entirely lack nuanced human judgment, we end up building incredibly brittle, dangerous tools.
Now let's contrast that rigid, ancient hardware with a totally different cultural framework from 16th century Prague, the Jewish folklore of the golem. Where Talos was this continuous, unstoppable force with zero human override, the golem, which was sculpted from river clay by Rabbi Lo to protect his persecuted community, worked quite differently. It operated on a conditional mandate. It wasn't just constantly running. It was temporarily activated for very specific defensive jobs. And, crucially, it had an explicit, built-in human override mechanism. The absolute genius of the golem myth is how its creators thought about control. Rabbi Lo brought the clay figure to life using a shem, a little slip of parchment containing the name of God, slipped into the creature. To turn it off, like before the Sabbath, to ensure it wouldn't break religious law, the rabbi literally just took the shem out. In other versions of the story, the Hebrew word emet, meaning truth, was written right on the golem's forehead to animate it. To shut it down, you just erase the very first letter. The word becomes met, meaning death. Boom, instant deactivation. This is a staggering, pre-modern vision of a human-in-the-loop architecture. It's basically an ancient kill switch. It's our ancestors screaming a warning across the centuries. Powerful artificial agents absolutely must remain interruptible and entirely subordinate to human judgment.
Section 2, execution without understanding. We're moving into symbolic delegation. Stepping out of mythology and into actual documented engineering, we hit the early 16th century, where Leonardo da Vinci constructed a mechanical robot lion. It was a total marvel. This thing could physically walk across a room, open its chest, and present you with a cluster of flowers. It's stunning early biomimicry. Think of it kind of like one of those modern robotic dogs that wags its tail when you pet it. It acts happy, it feels like it has intention, but it's really just executing a complex motor function. Da Vinci's lion proved a huge concept super early on. A machine can flawlessly run through a highly complex sequence and give this incredible illusion of life and intention without possessing a single, solitary drop of independent agency.
Fast forward a couple of centuries to the 1700s, and you get the Jacques Draw's Rider. This was a mind-blowing mechanical doll with over 6,000 moving parts. It could dip a real quill into a real inkwell and physically write out any pre-programmed text up to 40 characters long. It's this gorgeous piece of engineering, right? A direct physical ancestor to the computer. But the ethical dilemma baked into those spinning brass gears is actually profound. It represents programmability entirely divorced from comprehension. This automaton executed complex symbolic instructions flawlessly, but it had absolutely zero semantic awareness of what it was actually writing on the page. It generated perfectly coherent outputs without any grounding in reality or accountability for the message. Sound familiar at all? Yeah, it's essentially a physical clockwork version of a modern large language model predicting the next token without actually understanding a single thing it says.
That mechanical complexity leveled up in the 19th century when Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace conceptualized the analytical engine. Now, Babbage was all about the raw math of computation, but Lovelace's vision was way more radical. She realized that, given the right algorithms, a machine wouldn't just crunch numbers, it could manipulate symbols to compose original music and generate art. Over a century before it even existed, she literally laid the conceptual groundwork for generative AI. Her insight highlights a massive shift. We stopped delegating physical tasks to mechanical limbs and started delegating abstract thought processes to symbolic code. Yet, even with that massive leap in abstraction, the responsibility for what the machine produces still relies entirely on human specification.
Section 3. The illusion of life. Let's talk about the danger of projection.
We really have to pivot now to a profound psychological vulnerability we all have, which makes managing these systems so incredibly difficult. The researchers point us to Ovid's ancient myth of Pygmalion and Galatea. Pygmalion was a sculptor who carved a statue out of ivory that was so unbelievably lifelike and stunning that, well, he fell desperately in love with his own creation. He talked to it, brought it gifts, treated it like a real companion, until the gods finally took pity and breathed actual life into the stone. It's a beautiful story about our deep, desperate need for connection, sure, but it starkly highlights the massive danger of anthropomorphism, that relentless, almost uncontrollable urge humans have to project feelings, intentions, and even a soul onto inanimate artifacts.
And in the context of contemporary AI, this urge to anthropomorphize is a massive, massive risk. Modern conversational systems are brilliantly designed to simulate empathy, creativity, and intentionality. They use personal pronouns, they apologize, they tell jokes, they mimic human traits so perfectly that they completely blur the line between human and machine interaction. But we have to constantly remind ourselves, simulating empathy is absolutely not the same thing as experiencing consciousness. The huge danger here is that this convincing simulation tricks us into drastically misattributing moral agency to the software. If a chatbot acts unhinged, people start blaming the AI for being creepy. That's a dangerous trap. Blaming the software just weakens the ethical scrutiny on the actual humans and the multi-billion-dollar corporations that deliberately programmed and deployed it to act that way.
Section 4. The human mirror. Synthesizing all of this into actionable AI governance. So let's pull all these lessons from our ancestors together. The core problem today isn't that machines have magically become moral agents. The real issue is a concept called responsibility diffusion.
Modern AI development is just staggeringly complex. You've got thousands of underpaid data labelers, dozens of specialized software engineers, safety teams, corporate execs obsessing over stock prices, and finally, the end users. Accountability is just deeply fragmented. It's scattered across so many different institutional players that individual human liability is completely obscured. When a system causes harm, pointing a finger is nearly impossible. That opacity, that scary feeling of limited control we constantly complain about, it's not just a technical flaw in the code, it's the direct result of handing over immense authority without maintaining clear, traceable pathways of human accountability.
Okay, so how do we actually fix this? The research outlines 5 non-negotiable criteria for proper delegation to make sure we keep human authority. We can't just release these models into the wild, in the dark. First, we need strict auditability, meaning clear, open records of training data and deployment. Second, interruptibility. We literally need to bring back the golem's kill switch, requiring the technical and institutional mechanisms to pull the plug instantly. Third, reversibility for high-risk stuff. If we can't roll it back, we shouldn't deploy it. Fourth, capability bounding, setting explicit, hard limits on how much a model is allowed to scale its own autonomy. And lastly, compute monitoring, meaning we keep a very close eye on the massive, power-hungry hardware actually training these systems. Guys, these aren't just nice-to-have software features. They are the fundamental ethical requirements for surviving in an AI-driven world.
Which brings us to a final, pretty heavy question. If a highly advanced AI system makes a catastrophic mistake, who is really holding the weapon? The history of artificial intelligence is not some sci-fi story of an alien consciousness descending from the sky. From the lumbering bronze armor of Talos on the shores of ancient Crete, right up to the hum of the massive data centers powering today's language models, artificial intelligence has always been exactly what the name implies, an artifact. It is merely a mirror. It reflects human intent, human desires, and human governance. We are the ones who build the systems. We are the moral agents, and we alone must bear the absolute responsibility for what our creations do next.